she met this guy. There's a guy in a cowboy hat. Howdy, man. She talked to him. She flirted with him. This and that. She wasn't married. She had a boyfriend. And they ended up hooking up. Ended up going back to his place. She cheated on her boyfriend. Hey everybody, Stephen Bastian here. We're going to do another episode of Relationship Life, and this is episode 3. I'm titling it Consistency and Transparency in a Relationship. What exactly does that mean? Well, before we do that, why don't you get to know me a little bit? I'm going to be transparent with you. Because now we have a relationship, friendship. We know each other. You're getting to know me. So I know it's my 3rd episode in, but why not just tell you a little bit about me? My name's Stephen Bastian. I'm in my 40s. Got kids. I'm a filmmaker. I do weddings. I DJ. I do photography and video. I have a company called Pegasus Weddings and Events. My film company is Motion, Sound, and Magic Film. Sorry, I'm sucking on a lozenge. Hang on. And sorry about that. So yeah, I that's what I do. I'm a creative person. I've also done tile and flooring in the past, and I'm rather creative with that as well. Been married. Actually, I was married twice to the same woman. I'll tell you that story real quick. My ex and I met when I was younger. I was about 18. And we dated for a while. And then we got married. And sometime in the future, maybe I'll tell you that story. That's a funny story in and of itself of how we ended up getting married. But I didn't get her pregnant. That's not what it was. But about a couple of years into the marriage, we were fighting, we weren't getting along, we were, things started changing, and that's going to be the point of this whole show. I'll get to that in a minute, and you'll see why I'm telling you all of this. I'm telling you this to get to that part. We fought, had problems, mistrust, there were little lies here and there, things built up, to the point where neither one of us could take it anymore, and we ended up getting divorced. That was in 1993. We fast forward, we ended up, I didn't talk to her for a long time. Like, I wanted nothing to do with her. We had kids by then, by the way. And I only had contact with her when I wanted to see the children, but I never socialized with her in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, so fast forward a few years later, we end up talking again. We're talking more and more, spending more and more time with the kids, spending more and more time with her. One day we start talking and the old feelings come rushing back. We ended up getting back together and we got remarried. It was great. It was fantastic. It was better than ever. We'd learned from all of our past mistakes. We'd learned from our failures, and we made it work. And it worked great for a couple of years. Then the old fights came back. The old arguments came back. The old problems came back. Because human beings are creatures of habit. That is one of the truest statements you're ever going to hear from me is human beings are creatures of habit. They will do what they normally do, no matter how much a guy or a girl says they're going to change. At the end of the day, unless they really want to, they're not going to change. They have to want it so badly. They have to come, almost like what the Christians say, having a come to Jesus moment. They have to want it so badly that they're going to change for them because they want to better themselves. But anybody who's going to change for someone else, it's going to be a temporary change because human beings are creatures of habit. Anyway, so we started fighting again and we got divorced. I had to get over her again, and we just didn't speak for a long time. And then we started talking again. And I know what you're thinking. Third time's a charm, right? I dodged that bullet because I had a girlfriend at the time. Because it could have gone that way. I mean, we were really talking later on. And, now we're in 2007 or 2006 or 2008, somewhere around there. And mid 2000s. And we started talking again, like a lot. And we became really good friends. Like better friends than we'd ever been. And fortunately, I had a girlfriend because I never cheat. That's one thing I will never do is cheat because I've been cheated on. And that sick feeling in your stomach the morning you wake up after you've been cheated on, like you just feel like crap, like you've just been hollowed out inside. And I will get to an episode eventually on cheating and infidelity. But that feeling was just horrible, absolutely horrible. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, seriously, like ever. Hey, Steven, glad you could join me. Anyway, we were friends and we started talking. And one day she came to my studio. I had a photography studio down in Wilmington, and she came to my studio and she was like, out of the blue, she just goes, man, I wish I could find a good guy. And I was like, you deserve a good guy. You're a good person. And I didn't think anything else of it. We ended up talking some more, and then she left. Well, the next day, I'm talking to what was then my guitarist for my band. And he was like, dude, we were just shooting the breeze, talking, whatever. Out of the blue, he's like, man, I was just talking about my girlfriend and how she was awesome. And he was like, man, I wish I could find a good girl. And we were at the studio when we were having this conversation. And he was a cop, by the way. That was the really cool part. He was a cop. And he had shown up, driven up on his new motorcycle. And it was the police department's motorcycle. And he was showing it off to me because I ride, And I was like, man, that's a cool ride. It's a BMW. And so we're talking, and he says this, I wish I could find a good girl. And I was like, well, hello. Okay, so I call my ex, and I tell her, come down to the studio, get dolled up, come down to the studio. She thinks we're going to do a shoot. She thinks I'm going to take pictures of her. So she gets all dolled up. She comes down to the studio. She walks in. She sees this cop in uniform standing there. And I was like, I'm not going to mention names. I was like, so-and-so meets so-and-so. And I never mention names in the show, but so-and-so meets so-and-so, and they shook hands. How you doing? And I just put it out there. I said, look, the reason I had called you here, hon, is because my friend here, he's a good guy. And we were talking, and he mentioned that he's looking for a good girl. You mentioned yesterday that you're looking for a good guy. I looked at him, and we'll call him John. I said, John, take her out to dinner. He's like, what? He's like, I'm not even off duty. I said, take her out, get off duty. When you get off duty, take her out to dinner. I said, when do you get off duty? He's like, an hour. I said, okay, go home, get changed, come back, pick her up. We'll hang out here at the studio. So me and my ex hung out, we talked, and she was asking me like all about him, and I was telling her all about him. He was a good guy. Long story short, they've been married now for over 10 years, and they're happy, and I couldn't be happier for them. So the reason I tell you all of that is because I want to talk about consistency and transparency in a relationship. When you get into a new relationship with someone, your first instinct is to put your best foot forward. You're going to tell that person everything about you that's good, that's positive. I like swimming, I like surfing, I like horseback riding, I like long walks on the beach. You ever taken a long walk on the beach? It sucks, you're walking in sand. I like candlelight dinners. What kind of candlelight dinner can you have with somebody where you can't even see their face? You don't know whether you're having dinner with a beautiful woman, if you're a guy, or Joe Rogan, because you're candlelit, you can't see crap. But I digress. Whether you tell them all these positive things. And the reason I say that is because you look on any dating site, that's what they say. I like candlelight dinners, long walks on the beach. Nobody likes that. I mean, I like dinner, but I don't want to eat it by candlelight. Nobody likes that. But people say that because they want to look like somebody that somebody would want to date. Okay, so they put their best foot forward. They try to make a good impression. And there's nothing wrong with making a good impression. You're not going to spill out all your dirty laundry on the first date, or even the first 10 dates, or even in the first 6 months. I had a friend of mine that got mad at me because I didn't tell her certain details about my family. But I didn't know her then. And if you've ever seen the movie The Bucket List, some of you have probably seen it. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. In The Bucket List, Jack Nicholson's character tells Morgan Freeman's character about his granddaughter at dinner, about 2/3 into the show. And Morgan Freeman's character looks at him and says, I thought you said you didn't have grandchildren. And Jack Nicholson's answer was perfect. He said, I didn't know you then. That's true. You're not going to air all your dirty laundry. You're not going to tell that person everything about yourself right off date. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is consistency and transparency once you're in the relationship. I had an ex, I won't mention any names, but I had an ex that we dated, and she told me how wonderful, she was, and she was talking herself up. And at the time, I was a non-smoker. I was an adamant non-smoker. I wouldn't touch a cigarette if my life depended on it. I wouldn't even date anyone that smoked. It was disgusting to me. She knew that because she knew one of my very good friends and got intel on me even before we met. She wanted to meet me. So my friend ended up hooking us up. And she had already had intel on me. So she knew I was a staunch non-smoker. We get into the relationship. Months go by. A year goes by. We end up moving in together. It's great. We're getting along fantastically. Everything's perfect. Then one day I came home. I was doing tile at the time, and I came home from work early. Now, when you come home from work early, gentlemen, you tend to wonder if you're going to catch your girl banging somebody else. That's always nice to find. I've had that happen. Walked in on them. I didn't walk in on her banging somebody else. I walked up to the front porch of the apartment that we were living in, and I turned the corner around the staircase, and she's sitting in a chair smoking a cigarette. And I was like, wait a minute. You said you don't smoke. She's like, yeah, well, I do. I knew you were a non-smoker. I didn't want to tell you. And I was like, man, I've never even smelled it on you. Like, I've kissed you and never smelled cigarettes. How do you do that? She's like, I gargle, I mouthwash, I brush my teeth, I clean my clothes, I make sure you don't smell it. I try to be respectful. I said, okay. I wasn't mad at her. I was just confused. And so, long story short, we were at a party one time, and my friends all were smoking in the house because I was a good host. I put out ashtrays and everything. And, she looks at me and she says, can I smoke, Stephen? And I said, no. And she said, why? But your friends are smoking in the house. And I was like, yeah, but they're leaving. You live here. I don't want you to get in the habit of smoking in the house. Well, I kind of thought about it after I said it. It was kind of a dick move. So I was like, all right, honey, go ahead. I don't care. Just don't do it when they're not here. If we're at a party, that's fine. But she was like, no, I won't smoke in the house. Okay, great. So she lights up. My best friend, Peter at the time, I'll mention his name. My best friend, Pete at the time, he says, I've been friends with him since I was 12. He doesn't care if I talk about him. But my best friend, Pete, goes, man, have you ever tried one? And I was like, no. And you kind of see where this is going. So I said, no, I've never tried one. And he's like, I'll try it if you try it. All right, sure. Why not? Let's give it a shot, right? So I looked at Deb and I mentioned her name. It's okay. She knows she's my ex-wife. I looked at Deb and I said, give me a cigarette. She's like, what? The look on her face was priceless. I wish I'd had a camera. Shock, pure shock. And so she's looking at me shocked. She hands me a cigarette. She hands Pete one. Pete lights up. He didn't inhale. He cheated. I inhaled. Coughed my lungs out at first, but I inhaled. And I got, as if any of you are smokers, you know, what's called a head rush. I got dizzy. I got loopy. I'm laying back in the chair. I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. You know, I didn't even smoke weed at the time, so this was a big deal for me. All I did was drink a little bit. I've never been a drinker, but I drank a little bit back then. And so I felt this head rush, and I felt dizzy, and it was awesome. I was like, wow, that's weird. But I had never intended to do it again. Well, that night I went to bed, and I had a couple drinks, and I was I'm a bit of an insomniac. It's hard for me to get to sleep. I have to take melatonin to go to sleep some nights. It's really bad. But I couldn't sleep. And I'm laying in bed next to my wife, and I look at her and I go, she's going, I'm going to go outside and have a cigarette. I said, okay. And then I thought about it and I went, you know what? Now, get the ashtray. What? Yeah. So I smoked a cigarette. Got loopy, dizzy, head rush. Passed right out. It was great. So it started out with one cigarette a night, then two, then three. Ended up 2 packs a day. So consistency, back to what I was saying. So anyway, in a new relationship, you're going to put your best foot forward. You're going to tell that person all the great things about you. I posted earlier this morning one of my Stephen life tips, my last life tip. You can look it up. It says the seed of doubt, or the seed of doubt, or something like that. I forget exactly how I worded it. It just came to me and I wrote it down. But the seed of doubt becomes a big tree. It starts off very small. Okay, the seed of mistrust starts out very small and grows into a tree of doubt. That's very true. Have you ever seen those dominoes where you have the little tiny domino and it clicks and falls over to a bigger one, to a bigger one, to a bigger one, to a bigger one, to a monolithic sized domino, and it finally knocks that last one over? That's where mistrust can lead. It starts off very small, starts off very innocuous. I had a friend of mine that she was married and she went shopping. For those of you that live in North Carolina, you'll be aware of a store called Harris Teeter. Harris Teeter has a coffee shop, Starbucks, inside most Harris Teeters. She was going aisle to aisle to aisle to aisle, you know, shopping, getting the groceries for the fam, you know, doing her thing. She's going down aisle 7 and she sees a guy that she used to crush on, she used to have feelings for, they used to be good friends, they ended up parting ways. She sees him. She walks up to him, he notices her, she notices him. Hey, how have you been? Oh my God, that's amazing. How have you been? Blah, 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 blah. They're talking up a storm. He looks at her and says, hey, look, let's not stand here in the middle of the aisle. Let's check out, put our stuff away, and let's go have a cup of coffee at Starbucks. So they go and have a cup of coffee. And they're sitting there having coffee, and they're talking for like an hour. And they're talking about old times and old feelings. They ended up exchanging Facebook pages and phone numbers and, hey, keep in touch, and everything was great. But she's married, so she knows it. And she told him about her husband. She was straight up with him. I'm married, you know, got kids. And she goes home. Her husband looks at her and says, where were you? That's the longest shopping trip you've ever been on. You've been gone a while. She lies to him. Now, it was innocent. They were just having coffee. They were just catching up. She told the dude she was married. She was straight up with him. I'm happily married. I love my husband. I love my family. But her first instinct was to lie. Now, why did she lie? Why? The reason she lied was to protect him, to protect her husband. See, there's 3 kinds of lies. There's a lie And I'm going to do I was going to do one on honesty and all of that today, but I got derailed. But I will touch on it. There's two types of lies, I'm sure you're aware: commission and omission. There's also a third type of lie: protection. Sometimes we lie to people to protect them from the truth because they may not understand. She was afraid in her mind that if she'd have told him that she hooked up, or not hooked up, that she met up with an ex-friend that she used to have feelings for, that he would be suspicious, or he would wonder, was there a little more to that? Is she not telling me everything? Are we having problems that I don't know about? It would have raised questions in his mind that she wasn't ready to answer, or that she didn't want to deal with. So her first instinct was to tell a little white lie, a little lie of protection. You know, I have another friend that, I better not tell that story. She'll get mad. Anyway, back to that original story. She ended up telling her husband the truth. But the problem with that was now he knows she lied to him. And then he wondered why she lied to him. They're divorced now, because of that tiny little seed of mistrust. Once that seed is planted, once mistrust begins, it grows and festers. I've had people that I've been so close to, and because of one small lie that I caught them in, the friendship had to end. And like I told you the other day, the problem we have is that it's very hard to remember lies. So you remember the truth because it happened. It's recorded in your brain. You saw it, you experienced it, you felt it. You experienced the five senses. You were in the moment. A lie is fabricated. A lie isn't real. You don't experience those five senses. So it's very hollow. It doesn't really exist. So it's hard to remember. And another friend, girl. I'm friends with mostly women. Let me tell you that. We were talking about me earlier. I'm friends with mostly women. And the reason I get along with women so well is I am a sensitive male. I admit that freely. I can't talk to my guy friends about sensitive stuff because they don't want to hear that crap. I'm not the type of guy that's going to talk about football. That's just not me. I'm a nerd. I'm a dad. I'm a nerd. I mean, I got Star Wars stuff everywhere. You know, I'm an uber nerd. Okay, I have another show that we do with Jessica Lamb called Carpe Nerdium. Look it up on Facebook if you're not already a fan of the page. Become a fan. We're going to start ramping up that show as well, where we talk about all kinds of nerd stuff: Star Wars, Star Trek, MCU, DCU, everything. But this friend of mine, she went out one night with her friends, and she met this guy. There's a guy in a cowboy hat. Howdy, man. She talked to him. She flirted with him. This and that. She wasn't married. She had a boyfriend. And they ended up hooking up. Ended up going back to his place. She cheated on her boyfriend. She went home. And she, of course, lied to him. What'd you do last night? Oh, and the lie she told was total fabrication. Me and my friends went out and we found a karaoke bar and we did karaoke, and I was so nervous, and she had this whole story concocted. She had rehearsed it several times in her head. I was so nervous. I'd never been on a mic before. It was crazy, and it was so much fun, and God, I loved it. It was the best experience I've ever had. It was awesome. He's like, that's cool. That's awesome. 6 months later, that boyfriend was driving around with her after dinner trying to figure out what to do next on their date. He pulls up at a karaoke bar because he remembered, hey, Alyssa, he remembered that she liked karaoke. that she had a blast. So he parked the car, and there's a big neon sign that says karaoke night, Tuesdays. She looks over at him and she's like, why are we here? He's like, we're going to go do karaoke. It's fun. She's like, hell no, I ain't getting on no microphone. I ain't, no way. That ain't happening. You ain't getting me up there. That seed of doubt was planted. Wait a minute. You told me 6 months ago you went to karaoke with friends. Oh, I was drunk then. It wasn't the same. I couldn't do it sober. Well, we'll go and have a few drinks. No. I don't want to do it. Just take me home. That seed of doubt. That seed of mistrust. Those are lies of commission. Lies of omission is when you do something and you just don't say anything. And then you're caught. I would love to reference that specifically, but I promised a friend I would not, even though I would change the story somewhat to keep her anonymous. She does not want me talking about it, and I'm going to respect her wishes. But there are times when people lie to you and they don't, it's not that they're lying to you, it's that they're leaving things out and they're not transparent. And that's the part of the transparency is not only do you have to be consistent in a relationship. Okay, look, like I said earlier, you put your best foot forward, you put on your best face when you're in a new relationship. All right, let's say you get together, you start living together, you end up getting married. The things that you did in the beginning of the relationship have to be the same things that you do once you're in the relationship, once you're deep into the relationship. It has to be you. When you get into a new relationship, you have to be consistent. Don't try to overly impress the person. That person's either going to like you for who you are or they're not. If they don't, bye. You don't need them because they're not liking you. It's easier not to lie in that first place. I've been on both sides. Yes, Alyssa, exactly. It's easier to just be straightforward from gate. If you're a Star Wars nerd like me, don't hide it. Don't pretend like you're not because in a conversation on the phone she said she hates all things Star Wars. Don't hide that. It's just going to make you miserable. And it's going to sow seeds of mistrust when she finds out you lied to her. Or vice versa. Okay? You've also got to be consistent in your actions. I don't want to be graphic. I want to keep this show as PG as possible. That's why I don't use a lot of foul language, even though I curse like a sailor. I don't want to offend people. People in this day and age are really easily offended. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've offended people just by making a joke. And it was just an innocent joke. And I'll tell you the joke. I made a joke one time. I said, we were talking about the friend zone, and I said, it was a Rodney Dangerfield joke, actually. I stole it, borrowed it. And I said, my mother never breastfed me as a baby. She said she only liked me as a friend. And a few people laughed, but some people were offended. That's disgusting. You're talking about your mom, dude. Jesus. Really? But it derailed my train of thought. Hang on a second. So you've got to be consistent in the relationship from day one. And I don't want to be graphic. That's where I was getting at. I don't want to be graphic and say something that's going to offend anybody. So I'm going to talk in as generic a term as possible. But there are things you do in the bedroom that when you're in a new relationship, you tend to pull out all the stops, especially if you're a guy. You want to impress her. If she wants to impress you, if she's into you as much as you're into him, she's going to do things for you that you're going to enjoy. Okay? If you don't catch my meaning, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be any plainer than that. But there's things you do for each other that only gratifies the other person. Feel me? In the beginning of the relationship, you're all about that. You'll go for it. You will go for it. Because you want to impress. How many of you have been in long-term relationships or married where that stops? 2-3 years in, you ain't getting those anymore. You ain't giving them to her anymore, or vice versa. Because there's no consistency. Because you showed that person that you were one way, and you turned out to be something else. And that in and of itself will make that person wonder, who did I end up marrying? The transparency part, as I said, is where you have to be upfront. Now, you don't have to spill your guts the first date. No, of course not. Not even the first 10 dates. Like I said, with the movie, the bucket list. Watch that movie. You'll see that moment. It's about 2/3 in. He's like, I didn't know you then. And I had a friend, I think I said this. If I didn't say it, I don't remember if I said it or not, but I had a friend that I told her some things about my family that I had never told her. And she was like, you didn't tell me that. I didn't know you then. I felt comfortable enough to tell you. And when you do feel comfortable enough to be that transparent, when you're deep into the relationship and you're either the best, I mean, this goes for friendships as well. It's not just relationships. My shows are not necessarily just about relationships. If you have a best friend and you're not 100% transparent with that person, that's not your best friend. That's just a friend. People throw around the word best friend way too much. It's almost thrown around as much as love. This is my best friend. That's my best friend. I've got 5 best friends. Best means best. Okay? There is no better than best. Your best friend is your top friend, your number one, your go-to, your rock, the person that you rely on for everything personal. You are connected to that person. It's your best friend. Everybody else is just a friend. So if you have a best friend and you're telling that person I'm your best friend, and then you turn right around and text message someone else and say you're my best friend, and you tell everything that person says to the other person, and you've got like 5 best friends, and you're telling every single best friend the same thing, you're my best friend, I'm so close to you, I love you, I think you're awesome. What you're doing is lying to yourself, and you're cheating them out of what could be a possibly great friendship. Just be transparent, be honest. I would rather have somebody hurt me and say, look, you're my best friend, sure, but I've got other friends, and I like some of them better than you. Or if I'm interested in a girl and I like her, I would rather her tell me, I'm talking to other guys. I'm interested in other guys, than lie about it and say, no, I only talk to you. Be transparent. Be consistent. Be honest. Just be a good human. And I promise you, if you do that in your next relationship, or if you're able to salvage the one you're in, you'll be better for it. I'm Stephen Bastian, and this is The Relationship Life. See you next time, tomorrow. Oh, and let me know in comments whether you want me to do these shows in the morning, noon, afternoon, evening. I want to make sure you guys see it. So, tell me what time's best for you, and I'll go with majority rule. Anyway, peace.